I've read many great business books, but recently people kept telling me, Pat, can you just explain your top 10 books of all time in entrepreneurship? So that's exactly what I'm doing in this video here. Top 10 best books that I believe every entrepreneur ought to read, and why. I may read a thing or two here from the book as well to explain why this book is so necessary for entrepreneurs to read. Now keep in mind, there was a lot of great books. I got a lot of great books that I wanted to put in the list, but there's only 10 of them that made it. So number 10, let's start off with number 10 on this list. The number 10 book, why I believe every entrepreneur needs to read this, is a book by a good friend of mine, Robert Greene, who's written 40 Laws of Power, 33, Mastery, Art of Seduction, 50th Law, and he's working on another one right now. Him and I were talking last week that's going to be unbelievable, similar to like a 40 Laws of Power. The number 10 book on my list is 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. And I'll tell you why. Some people ask, why do you talk about war? What does this have to do with entrepreneurship? And I'll explain to you exactly why. Listen, you know, think about running a business is running a small tribe. You've heard of tribal leadership, which is ranked number 11, by the way, but you're running a small little tribe. In other words, you're running a country, right? And when you're running a country and you're small getting started, typically no one's going to try to take over America or Russia, maybe, or you know, a major, they're not going to try to, unless if you're some crazy guy from Germany, then that's a different story. But most of the time, people don't go after the bigger countries. They make the bigger countries last to go after. Okay. They start off by taking out small countries. When you're an entrepreneur, you are running a very, very small country. And everybody out there has one goal. Every competitor of yours, they want to put you out of business. If you're a direct competitor, not a sideline, not somebody that you can partner up with and you can cross-pollinate and they sell your product and you sell their product, or partnership or software. If they're not somebody that can be a vendor or a partner, they want you to go out of business. Think about that. So if you don't know the different strategies they're going to use to put you out of business, you're going to be caught in a way that you're going to say, what the heck just happened? These are pros. These are professionals. You're not dealing with lightweights who are like, oh, it's so great. Let us also help you get into business and make it. No, their goal is for you to go out of business, period. So you got to have a mindset of a general, a warrior, a strategist, somebody that's going to be thinking like the Alexander or the Napoleon. So you know when somebody's maneuvering a certain way, you're like, okay, I see what's happening over there. And here's what we're going to do over here to have an edge for yourself. Okay. Let me read a part of this book here. My favorite strategy in this book is number 4. Okay, he says, create a sense of urgency and desperation. He calls it the death ground strategy. Let me read it to you. You are your worst enemy. You waste precious time dreaming of the future instead of engaging in the present. Since nothing seems so urgent to you, you are only half involved in what you do. The only way to change is through action and outside pressure. Outside pressure. Put yourself in situations where you have way too much at stake to waste time or resources. If you cannot afford to lose, you won't. Cut your ties to the past, enter unknown territory where you must be depending on your wits and energy to see you through. Place yourself on death ground where your back is against the wall and you have to fight like hell to get out alive. See, I like that mindset. And it goes into explaining what other people thought that way or did it that way that helped them get out of it and going out there and winning. So the number 10 book on my list is 33 Strategies of War. Lots of great strategies in there. Number 9 book is an author I heard 14 years ago. I heard him speak, and I think I heard him speak in either San Jose or Palm Springs. I heard this man speak, Michael Gerber. He wrote a book called E-Myth. And the reason why E-Myth is a very, very important book to read is because it allows you, as the person who calls themselves the entrepreneur, to realize maybe you're really not an entrepreneur. You think you're an entrepreneur, you're not really an entrepreneur, right? Or you are an entrepreneur, but you're not paying attention to the other sides of the business, which is the system side. Because a lot of times the entrepreneur, maybe the visionary, the ideas, oh, it's great, you know, I don't want to deal with the minutia, I just want to go out there and do all this other stuff. And they're not really paying attention to systems, and so you can't really scale your business. He talks about that in the book. I'll read a part of this book to you. It says, if your business is having problems, in all likelihood, the problem has never been your business. It has always been you. Perhaps you see yourself as an entrepreneur, but work more like a technician. To clarify what we mean by this, let's have a look at the 2 definitions. Entrepreneur, a person who has visions and dreams of a better future. They innovate, create, and practice forward thinking. Technician, A person who is a doer, a worker, a person who isn't interested in ideas but actions. Now, when a technician, listen, when a technician's bored of making money for their boss and they decide to start their own business, they fail because they see a business as a place to go to work. It's just another job. That's why a lot of people fail as an entrepreneur, because they're really technicians. But instead of doing one job, the job they've always done, they do all jobs that a business requires. Thus, the business folds because the technician burns out, unable to juggle all the jobs that need doing, and they ultimately despair. The solution, according to Gerber, is not necessarily to turn from being an entrepreneur to being a technician, but to unleash the entrepreneur spirit within the technician. The technician who goes into business without an entrepreneur perspective will fail. There is no argument about this. You can still be a technician, hardworking, loving what you do, but you need to be an entrepreneur too. An entrepreneur is someone who knows that a business is not simply a place to go to work. It is much more than that. So what does that mean? I had a conversation, one of my good friends that finally came to me. He says, look, I was working for a company, I was a number 7 guy. Then I became the number 5 guy. Then I became the number 3 guy. And then I became the number 2 guy. Then I said, I'm gonna go out there and be the number 1 guy. He went and became the number 1 guy. It was the worst victory of his lifetime. He made 6 million here, 3 million here, 2 million here, 8 million here. He made nothing on the last one, no victory. And he says, after realizing why that was, I realized I don't make a good number 1, but I make a very good number 2. And he repositioned himself, followed it with another big victory. Why is this? He understood himself on why that is. That's what E-Myth will do when you read it, getting a whole different perspective in your business. The next book I want to tell you about is again by Robert Greene. 40 Laws of Power was number 12 on my list. And I put Mastery at number 8. And I'll tell you why I put Mastery at number 8, because, you know, so many people in life will live a life. Let's just say you and I have 75 to 100 years to live. Some of you live 75, some may live 92. Most people die never really mastering anything. They master being bored. They master watching TV. They master a lot of other things. But very few people master a skill set or a trait. Very few people. And I don't care what you do. I saw a video the other day I posted on Facebook that was about, you know, these people who are taking these things and they're spinning it and it's going around and they're doing it so perfectly. And this one guy who's cleaning the window at an airport, which was insane. This other guy that's cutting the watermelon in a way that's just ridiculous. This other guy that's cutting onion in a way I've never seen before. And I respect that. I respect professionals. I respect people that take a certain small thing and they become masters at it. This book does a very good job using stories of whether it's Franklin or some musicians on explaining how you yourself can go from somebody who's a novelist at anything you do that no one knows about. You may like it, but you're not good at it or even great at it, and using formulas that other people have used for you to become a master in what you're doing. Lots of people, they see opportunities and say, oh my God, I want to do this. Oh, I'm going to go out and go do this industry and that industry and this industry. And they keep changing over a 5, 10, 15, 20-year period. And they never really experience a big victory because they just learned a lot of things, but they never mastered anything. Very, very important book. One of the main reasons why people kept asking me, Pat, you know, somebody told me the other day, you know, Pat, I see you more as a technology guy, man. I see you as a software guy. I see you as a Silicon Valley guy. Seriously? Insurance and financial services? Don't you think that's boring? Don't you think you should have gone into Silicon Valley and worked in some kind of a technology guy? Have I thought about it? Yes, I've thought about it. But I chose this industry. And I was already in it into deep where I fell in love with it. And I said, we got to figure out a way to take this to a whole different level. And now we're disrupting the industry in a way that others aren't doing, right? But I chose this. This became a very big commitment that I had to myself. And I think you can do it as well. Next book. As an entrepreneur, you will have a lot of conflict you'll have to face. One great book that I have on my list as well is, but it's not on this list, the top 100 list, is 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni, but it's not the next book. And he talks about one of the levels of thing that people have a hard time with is avoidance of conflict. A lot of people don't even want to deal with conflict. We're afraid of conflict because you had a father or a mother or an ex or somebody that, you know, you would have a fight and it was always ugly and screaming mom or screaming dad and people didn't speak for 2 or 3 weeks. And like, I don't even want to deal with conflict. So every time conflict comes up, you run away. No. It's okay. No worry. Let's work it. Let's move on, right? But it doesn't really improve things. This book made it on my number 7 list, Crucial Conversation, which has sold 2 million copies, It's written by these 4 consultants that they wrote the book together. I've gone to a course of theirs, highly recommend it. It's a very good course. We even made a funny video about it, I think 2 years ago. It's a really funny video that we made where Mario and Paul are actually acting, with gummy bears and all this stuff. Really interesting on what happened with that. I like this book because you're going to have tough conversations with vendors, with partners, with employees, with staff, with executive, with sales, with media, with many different people. How you go about doing it could cost you a relationship, could cost you negative feedback, could cost you a person that doesn't want to do business with you, could cost you losing a good client, could cost you many different things. So it is a very important skill set. Don't watch these movies and people say, well, Steve Jobs cursed everybody out. And I just saw Ashton Kutcher act like Steve Jobs was cursing everybody. I'm going to take that approach. Okay, great. Try doing that when you're negotiating with people where the leverage is not on your side. Then what are you going to do? Well, Mark Zuckerberg in Social Network, the movie was, did you see how he spoke to the attorney? He learned how to do some of these things. That doesn't happen by pure luck. You got to learn that skill set as well. So let me read you a part of it here in the book that it helps you with. Look what it says. Some common crucial conversations. You tell me if some of these areas you can improve in. Ending a relationship, how to go about doing it. Talking to a coworker who behaves offensively or makes suggestive comments. Asking a friend to repay a loan. You have a friend that needs to repay a loan, tells you how to do it in here. Giving the boss feedback about her behavior. Approaching a boss who's breaking his own safety or quality policies. Critiquing a colleague's work. Asking a roommate to move out. One of our friends could probably use that pretty good. We're not going to get into that. But resolving custody or visitation issues with an ex-spouse. Holy moly, some people need help with that. Dealing with a rebellious team. Okay, talking to team members who isn't keeping commitments. Discussing problems with sexual intimacy. Wow, that's deep. Confronting a loved one about substance abuse problem. That's a lot of people have that issue as well. Talking to a colleague who is hoarding informational resources. Giving an unfavorable performance review. Asking in-laws to quit interfering. Do any married people relate to that? Talking to a coworker about a personal hygiene problem. Hello. You ever have any of these issues where you don't know how to handle it? Go buy this book. Crucial Conversations. Number 7 on my list. Number 6 is a book that hasn't done well. Didn't sell that many copies. I even told the author. I hired him to come from New York to Palm Springs at that one event we had. We rented a 17,000 square foot house. It was a mastermind. It was the most epic mastermind ever with a few special moments that we had. One with John Mason, a buddy of ours that's the worst basketball player in the world. Ended up winning the game of 21 that lasted 2.5 hours in 115 degree temperature. He closed his eyes. He prayed to all the gods in the universe. Left-handed shot the ball and went in. It's the only shot he made, but he did end up winning the game. Anyways, long story short, I brought this guy and I said, Howard, man, why didn't this book do better? This book I purely got it by pure luck. You know how you buy a book on Amazon and then all of a sudden other books come out and by pure luck you hit something? I searched this title and it came out and I bought it. Somebody didn't recommend to me this book. I found this book by pure luck. If they do a better job with this book, it'll sell so many more copies. It's a book by Howard Gutman called Great Business Teams, Cracking the Code for Standout Performance. Maybe we need a better title for that book. It's a phenomenal book. Don't let this book cover, title, all this stuff fool you. It's an exceptional book. Look, there's a part of it here in the book where it talks about how to hire people, how to hold them accountable, how to go through a performance, how to do the one-on-one critiquing, how to create a culture, how to overcome people, to know how to deal with conflict and collaborate instead of compromise, instead of avoidance, instead of arguing. It goes through every single thing. And one of the parts is accountability. And it gives you step by step on how to hold your team members accountable. No one likes accountability. It explains how to do it. Point 1, be open and candid. Say what's on your mind. Number 2, play for the team, not yourself or your function. Number 3, act like an owner. Be engaged, add value, keep the team on track. Number 4, be personally accountable, deliver on promises, meet deadlines. Number 6, hold one another accountable for delivering business results. Number 7, hold one another accountable for resolving interpersonal conflicts. Number 8, be receptive to feedback from others. Listen carefully, depersonalize, and change your behavior accordingly. Number 9, base feedback to others on observable behavior. Deliver feedback objectively without personalizing or blaming. Number 10, I think it's number 10, number 9, act as a coach to team members in need. And number 10, observe the protocols or ground rules by which the team has agreed to operate. Lots of great value in this book. Highly, highly recommend this. This book made the number 6 list for me. Great Business Teams. Next one is a book I read 13 years ago. It was a book I couldn't put down. It's somewhat technical. It's the number 5 book on my list. And that book is called Power versus Force by David Hawkins. This book's been recommended by Wayne Dyer, Oprah Winfrey, many different people. A lot of people love this book. And what it talks about is this. A lot of times in business, you'll try to force people to move. You'll try to force people to do things. You'll try to force things to happen in your business, and you feel like you're absolutely burning out because you're forcing it. It explains how to go from force to how to go to power and influence. There's a part in this book which explains the different levels of consciousness. I did a video on this, I think 4 years ago, that had to do with Star Wars. Yeah. And I went through the different levels of consciousness and explains the different levels of consciousness from the lowest to the highest level. Lowest level is shame. You're ashamed of everything you've done. Guilt, then apathy, then grief, then fear, then desire. Desire like for sex or drugs and alcohol. Then anger, then pride, then it's equilibrium, which is the first level of consciousness. That's a positive one. Courage. You have the courage to talk about your faults. You have the courage to improve. You have the courage to get up and say, this is what I haven't been doing. I'm going to improve on this. You have the courage to risk. You have the courage to do things. You have the courage to lead. Then it's neutrality. You can sit there and take other people's opinions and you can be neutral. Then it's willingness. You are willing to make things work. You are willing to rekindle relationships. You are willing to forgive. You are willing to work on improving. Then it's accepting people and not judging people's way of political beliefs, religious beliefs, the way they view certain things. You have a certain way of accepting that. Reason. You become good at processing issues. You become a source where people come to you to reason different issues. Then it's love. You learn to love people. That's 500. Then it's joy. You enjoy life. Then it's peace. Not a lot gets to you. Then the highest level is enlightenment, which he says only about a handful of people have reached to that level. 700 to 1,000 is what he talks about. I just love this book. It explains a part in a book where he says about this phenomenon that when a person gets into this phase of working, elevation of consciousness often inspires a prolonged transcendence of pain and exhaustion necessarily to achieve higher levels of performance. He says this phenomenon is commonly described in terms of pushing oneself to the point where one suddenly breaks through a performance barrier and the activity becomes effortless. The body seems to move with grace and ease of its own accord. It's like mystical, it's magical, as though animated by some invisible force. The accompanying state of joy is quite distinct from the thrill of success. It's a joy of peace and oneness with all that lives. You get to a point when you're running a business that everything becomes effortless. People say, well, how does he make it look so easy? Because it really is easy. I went through a certain wall to get to this point where everything becomes easy. Phenomenal book. Don't let the book's technicalness, that's the word, in the first 40, 50 pages fool you to not finish this book. It's a very good book. All right, we're going to number 4 now. This is another book like Howard Gutman's book that I contacted the author and said, hey, how come this didn't sell 500,000 copies? Man, did you guys do any marketing with this book? I actually wanted to buy his book, meaning all the rights to his book, because I was fascinated with his book. You probably never heard of it. The book is called Barbarians to Bureaucrats, Corporate Life Cycle Strategies. And I love this book because what he talks about is what happens to societies is a similar thing that happens to companies. Remember how earlier I talked about look at your company as a country? He talks about how a country is made by somebody that goes out there and takes the territory, and then boom, there's warriors, barbarians, then there's explorers and saying, hey, where's the lake? Where is this? Then there's the builders, let's build some buildings. Then comes the administrators, we need some laws. Then it's the guys that, come late and they're like, I know everything because I'm the educated, I'm the smart, and everything collapses, right? You see this happening in countries many, many times. We have a little bit of happening in America right now. But it's a fascinating book. Then you have a synergist that comes that gets everybody together. So it explains that phase. The first phase, the prophet, the visionary. Then barbarian, then builder, explorer, then administrator, then bureaucrat, then aristocrat. Then you have the synergist. There's a part in the book that I want to read to you on how he views a prophet. A prophet is the visionary. I'll just give you an idea to see how he talks about it. If you work for a prophet, don't expect them to provide specific objectives or instructions. He is more likely to send you out to vague missions. Ask him to discuss your objectives, then write your own based on your discussion and provide him with a copy. Don't expect him to follow up on the details of your work. He doesn't care. Talk to him about the larger goals toward which you are working and how those goals fit into his vision. Seek out the prophet for advice and his ideas, particularly on large and visionary issues. Every prophet values thinking and believes that others who enjoy discussing the ideas are also amongst the wise. Be tolerant of his latest idea. It may sound crazy, impractical, and a complete change in direction. Don't confront him with all this that is wrong, with his brainstorm. He is sensitive and doesn't want to have his ideas squelched. I mean, this is just fascinating. If you work with a prophet, that makes sense. Now, if a prophet works for you, you are lucky. Recognize him with his creative abilities. Reinforce and encourage those talents. Do not demand that he be well organized or conform to standard procedures. He needs you to listen. He needs to know that his visionary ideas are important to you. Let him know that within your company there's room and opportunity for the implementation of his ideas. Help him distinguish between his regular job and his creative ideas. He may need to justify his salary and mundane work. Protect him from bureaucrats. Holy moly. Remember that in mature companies, prophets are all too often crucified. How interesting is that? I've experienced that before. Have patience. Prophets work not for this quarter's results, but for the impact they can have over the long run. They're long-term thinkers. Their view is very long range, and insistence on immediate results destroys creativity. So why is that so important? Well, you got to also learn about how the barbarian is, how the builder is, explorer is, administrators, bureaucrats, aristocrats. Then whatever environment you're working, you're going to sit there and say, that guy's an aristocrat. Then you know how to deal with them. That guy's a builder and explorer. That's what we need. Man, this is unbelievable. You'll learn. Phenomenal book. Lawrence Miller, if you're watching this, great job writing this book. I highly suggest you try to figure out a rewrite a new one. I'll be one of the first to promote your new book if you do it. So you got a big fan here with your book. All right, next one here. It's a classic. Next one is the first book I ever read. It's a book my sister told me to read. When I worked at Bally Total Fitness, she said, you need to read this book. I did, and it changed the way I treated people and I viewed people. Because at the end of the day, you got to know your number one product is people. The number one product. It's not software. It's not dental products. It's not pharmaceutical sales. It's not real estate. It's not social media. It's not marketing. It's not advertising. It's people. And if you don't know your number one product is people, you're going to have problems. You're going to have a lot of problems. So the number 3 book is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Fascinating book. It's a classic. Dale Carnegie. I don't know how many copies it sold. The last number I read was 45 million. It's one of those books that you need to read. In a nutshell, at the end, he talks about the different way of thinking to winning people. Here's what he says. Principle number 1. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. Number 2, show respect for others' opinions. Never say you're wrong. Number 3, if you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Number 4, begin in a friendly way. Number 5, get the other person saying yes, yes immediately. Number 6, let the other person do a great deal of talking. Number 7, let the other person feel like the idea is his or hers. Number 8, try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. Number 9, be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires. Number 10, appeal to the noble motives. Number 11, dramatize your ideas. Number 12, throw down a challenge. Read the book. Very good book. Probably one of those books you want to read once a year, or listen to the audio once a year. If you read it once, just keep listening to the audio every year, one time. It'll help you out a lot. Number 2 was a interesting book that was recommended to me by a good friend of mine, Byron Udell. Byron, if you're watching this, I don't know how many people I've had buy this book. It's just a fascinating book. Byron and I don't know if we were in Dallas, Byron, or we were in Orlando. We were both invited to this nice dinner. Byron runs a very, very big online insurance company that does very well. He's very well off. He has a son that's extremely successful who was living in, he took over Shaq's last house in LA and does very well in Hollywood and music. And every time Byron and I get together, we just have the most epic conversations together. We're sitting there and his mind was going so fast. It was going so fast. I'm looking at his eyes. It's just bouncing all over the place. I like this guy. I like the way this guy thinks. And he's somebody I can learn a lot from because of his brain. He says, Pat, you got to read this book. I said, what book? He said, Hypomanic Edge. I said, Hypomanic Edge? He said, yes, I've never heard of it and I've read a lot of books. He says, okay, go read it. I bought the book. This is the title. The link between a little craziness and a lot of success in America. See, when you read this book, you will look at hypomanic, manic, ADHD, bipolar in a complete different way. All of us have somebody like that in our family. If you're an entrepreneur, some of you have been accused on some of these things. You may be happy one day, ticked off the next minute. Like literally in a second, boom, it changed. How's that happen? Are you crazy? Do you have problems? People in school will say, your kid has problems. So all your life, you're like, I have problems. You don't understand. I was diagnosed with BS, which is bullshit, is what I was diagnosed with. And all this stuff they label you with, right? And all our lives we have problems. No. You don't have problems. You may have a lot of gifts on the way your brain's wired, but everyone, because they're not wired like you, they've convinced you have problems. You need to know that. If you don't know that, you think you're going to be crazy the rest of your life. See, So you read this book and the characters it uses, Andrew Jackson, and Hamilton, which is a fascinating story of Hamilton, George Washington, Clinton, the stories, Kennedy. It's just incredible stories he tells. And I'll read a part of it here to you. My new hypothesis became from American entrepreneurs. He did a study on a couple thousand people, and then he interviewed 10 high-end internet CEOs. These are guys that were running multi-billion-dollar companies. And I asked them certain things, and I asked them if they agree with this. These are certain qualities that these guys may have in common as entrepreneurs. Listen to this. He is filled with energy. He is flooded with ideas. He is driven, restless, and unable to keep still. He channels his energy into the achievement of wildly grand ambitions. Is that you? Number 5. He often works on a little sleep. He feels brilliant, special, chosen, perhaps even destined to change the world. He is euphoric. He can be euphoric. He becomes easily irritated by minor obstacles. He is a risk taker. He overspends in both his business and his personal life. He acts out sexually. He sometimes acts impulsively with poor judgment in ways that can have painful consequences. He is fast talking. He is witty and gregarious. His confidence can make him charismatic and persuasive. He is also prone to making enemies and feels he is persecuted by those who do not accept his vision and mission. Do you relate to anybody like that? Do you know somebody like that? You may want to read the book called Hypomanic Itch. It's number 2 on my list because there is a major misconception about entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs who don't know how they're wired think they have problems. Go read this book. Thank me later. Okay, last book. Read a lot of books, 1,100 books. This one's at the top of my list. It was a gift given to me by our friend, Phyllis Brown, who bought it for me. And I set it aside 6 months later. I read the book. And I said, wait a minute, it's one of the best books I've ever read in my life. And it ended up being the number 1 book, and I've recommended it over and over and over again. And I've read it so many different times. And the book is called Laws of Success by Napoleon Hill. Not Think and Grow Rich, Laws of Success. There's a lot of great books by Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil, that was rewritten with Sharon Lechter, and a bunch of other things that Think and Grow Rich, all these other books that Napoleon Hill wrote. This is at the top of my list. I mean, it talks about so many different things in life. I'll read you the different chapters. Self-confidence, initiative and leadership, imagination, action, enthusiasm, self-control, habit of performing more service than paid for, attractive personality, accurate thought, concentration is a fantastic chapter, tolerance, failure, cooperation, golden rule, just a lot of good stuff. But I'll read one of them to you. Okay, I'll read one of the small paragraph to you. No amount of money could possibly be made to take the place of the happiness and joy and pride that belong to the person who digs a better ditch, who builds a better chicken coop, or sweeps a cleaner floor, or cooks a better meal. Every normal person loves to create something that is better than the average. The joy of creating a work of art is the joy that cannot be replaced by money or any other form of material possessions. When you make millions and you think that's it, if it's only money, you will be very bored very quickly. If it's about mastering something and becoming a version of yours that you yourself don't recognize, then you'll experience joy and happiness. That makes the top of my list. Like, I had a lot of other books that would be notables. Blue Ocean Strategy is the one that I love. Seduction, Sam Walton, Road to Freedom, Lean Startup, Psycho-Cybernetics. There's a lot of them. Anything you can read on Peter Drucker. You can go through my list. I have a top 100 list of books as well. This is just top 10, but if you want to find out my top 100 books for entrepreneurs, you can go to my website. We'll put a link on the bottom. If you haven't been on my website, you can always go to patrickbetdavid.com. Give it to me. Boom. There we go. And you can find the books there on the left website. On the right side of the website, your right, website's left, you'll see a link that says top 100 books. Click on that. You'll see all the books. And if you haven't read some of them, order the books and read them and comment on the bottom on what you got from the books. But I can tell you, for a guy that never went to college, I did and I dropped out. For a guy that doesn't have a bachelor's or an MBA or an associate's or any of those books, I became who I am today because I became the self-educated student. I didn't rely on traditional education to have somebody telling me on how to run a business who's never run a business before, but they read a textbook. I didn't see value in me paying $200 for that. I wanted to learn from people who actually ran businesses, and these guys have experience that taught me how to do what I've done with the business. So highly recommend you go get those books if you haven't read them. And if there are any other books you would add to the list, comment on the bottom. If you got any questions or comments and thoughts about the books I recommended as well, comment on the bottom. And last but not least, Mario, throw me my new pillow. Throw me my new pillow. Hey, we got a big projects coming up. I've been talking about this a lot lately. It's going to be in August. I am very, very, very excited about this. We just purchased a domain for 6 figures, and you'll find out what this domain. It's going to be very, very big. It's been finalized. We own the domain now. It'll be launched here very, very soon. Our goal is to get this channel, this YouTube channel, to over 100,000 subscribers by August 31st, and we need your help. We got a lot of loyal followers on this fan, a lot of people that comment, and I try to get back to everybody on YouTube. If you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, please do so. And if you're a loyal fan of getting great content on a weekly basis, we believe our channel can go against anybody on YouTube for this topic of entrepreneurship. Anybody on YouTube, we're very confident against going with anybody on YouTube on becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a successful entrepreneur. So if you love the channel, help us get to 100,000, get your friends and peers to also subscribe to this channel as well. With that being said, see that button right there? Click on it, right button right there. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.